So one of the most common questions I get when I talk about trading, not just online, but also just out in the real world, people often ask, hey, isn't trading just gambling? And especially online, when I tell people I trade options, people specifically ask, is options trading just gambling? Well, this is a tricky subject because, we've got to dive a little deeper into that question. And I wanted to do this on camera today because it is going to cover some very important concepts regarding trading, some basic concepts you need to understand in order to answer this kind of question. We're also going to get into a little bit of the psychology of trading as well. So the first thing we need to do is we need to define what we are talking about when we say gambling. So when people ask, is trading just gambling? Well, what do you consider gambling? Because everybody kind of has a different definition on what they consider gambling. Some people consider you putting any money at risk in order to make some money, right? They consider, whatever it is you do in life, if you put some money out there that's a risky endeavor in order to potentially make some kind of reward, that's gambling. Now, for me, I think that is a little bit too broad because in that case, yes, trading would be gambling, passive investments would be gambling, flipping houses would be gambling, starting a business would be gambling, pretty much a lot of things you do in life. Many of the things you do with your money would be gambling at that point. I think that's too broad of a definition. For me, I would consider gambling you putting money at risk where the odds are not in your favor. That's what I consider gambling. So a good example of what I'm talking about as far as are the odds in your favor or not, depending on whether you're gambling or not, would be, let's say we want to play a game. Let's flip a coin. And every time the coin comes up heads, I have to pay you $10. But every time the coin comes up tails, you have to pay me $11. Now, the odds are in my favor, right? Because every time I lose, I only have to pay $10. Every time you lose, you have to pay me $11. But we have the exact same win rate percentage. We're going to win roughly 50-50, right? The coin flip is going to be 50% heads, 50% tails in the long run. So I have positive expectancy if I only have to pay you $10 every time I lose, but you pay me $11 every time you lose, right? That is a money printer right there. That's not gambling. That's just smart investment on my part to play that game with you. Now, if I was on your side of that, is that gambling? Yes, you're straight gambling because the odds, if you have any basic math skills, the odds are not in your favor, but you're choosing to play the game anyway, just hoping to get lucky, right? That's straight gambling. So when people ask, is trading gambling? I would say that any responsible form of trading where that trader or investor knows he has positive expectancy, that's not gambling at all. That's just a smart way to put your money to work, right? So anybody that's passively investing in the S&P 500, for example, are they gambling? No, they're just being smart with their money. Options traders, some of the options strategies that I do on this channel, selling puts and products like ES and MES, selling put credit spreads and SPY and QQQ and things like that. As long as you manage your risk appropriately, which we focus heavily on managing risk on this channel, is that gambling? No, again, that's just a smart way to put your money to work. Now, a lot of people consider gambling is you going to the casino and putting money at risk in a game. And actually, with what I just said, that positive expectancy, if you know you can win in the long run, that's not really gambling. Well, you got to think that some of the games in the casino are not necessarily gambling at that point. Many of them are, most are actually. For example, you go and pull the slot machine, right? That has negative expectancy. You can't beat that. That is rigged against the players. You cannot consistently, repeatedly play slots over and over again and expect to win in the long run. You are going to bleed money. Same thing with craps. Same thing with the roulette wheel. The roulette wheel is a great example because it is 38-1 your odds of actually hitting on the roulette wheel. What's the payout? The payout is 35-1. You're guaranteed to lose in the long run. But let's take blackjack, for example. Now we've got a game here where you're not necessarily guaranteed to lose. You do have positive expectancy in some blackjack games. You have a small little edge if you play the cards perfectly the way you're supposed to, if you play perfect strategy, you can come out slightly ahead. It's a very small little edge you have in the game, but there is some edge. So would blackjack be gambling? Well, if you know how to play it properly, it's not necessarily gambling, but here's an even better example. What about poker? Let's say you go to the casino and you play poker against other players at the casino. Is that gambling? Well, if you're a good poker player, maybe a professional poker player, and this is what you do to earn a living, no, that's not gambling, because poker, unlike all the other games we've talked about, you're playing against other players and it's all based on who is the most skillful player or not. And if you're a very skilled player, it's not really gambling when you're playing against lesser opponents, right? Because if you make sure that you're playing a game against lesser opponents, again, that's just a smart way to put your money to work. Now, having gone through all of that, I will say that I do think many forms of trading, and especially options trading, are gambling. I do think there's a lot of traders out there that are just straight up gambling. I think there's a lot of people in the world have a gambling addiction. That's why things like casino games are so popular. That's why the lottery is so popular. And increasingly, that's why trading, and especially options trading, have become more and more popular. There are a lot of people that have this gambling addiction gene in them, a sizable component of the population, unfortunately. And I do think some of those people do get sucked into the trading game, and they do it in reckless and irresponsible ways. Increasingly, we see these horror stories. We see these failed day traders on YouTube that blew up their accounts. They lost everything. They borrowed money from friends and family, from banks. I did a reaction video the other day on that failed day trader that, basically lost everything he had trying to day trade futures or whatever the hell he was doing. And then we see the horror stories on options subreddits like Wall Street Bets. All of those guys going out there and just buying those way out of the money long calls or long puts. They're trying to hit the lottery, right? They're trying to hit the jackpot playing options, and many of those people end up destroying their lives. So unfortunately, again, we have that small percentage of the population that just have that gambling bug and they can't shake it. But here's the thing, just because there's a small percentage of people out there that are treating options trading as gambling, does that mean options trading is gambling? Not in my mind. These are people that are just not using options properly, but that is not because options trading itself is inherently bad. It's just these people are broken and damaged people in some way, but you really can't do anything about it. That's the same thing with casino gambling bad inherently? Well, I would say for most people, it's not. I can go to the casino and lose a few $100s, no problem. Go to the casino once a year, twice a year, whatever it happens to be, have a few drinks, play a few games, have a little fun, and I'm fine. Some people are not like that. Does that mean that the casinos themselves are in some way immoral or evil? Not necessarily. Unfortunately, some people in the population have no self-control, no willpower. It's always been that way since the beginning of time. It will always be that way into the future. You can't blame options trading for other people's poor choices in life. I do think that options trading has we've gotten this stigma of being gambling now, because as options trading has become more and more popular, and that small percentage of traders that treat trading as gambling, those people, unfortunately, those are the ones that are in the news. They make all the headlines. They're the ones that get all the views on video. They get the clicks on social media. So it's the Wall Street Bets crowd. It's the people making outrageous bets and hitting. It's the gigantic wins that people make. That's exciting stories. And in some cases, the people that lost everything, those are also exciting stories. But, the 98% of us that are just doing the right things with our trading, we're boring. Nobody's interested in our stories. So unfortunately, it's the gamblers that get all the press in the trading world. And here recently, there's actually been like mainstream publications on sites like the Wall Street Journal recently had a series of articles where they were talking about options trading being gambling, and how certain traders with gambling addictions were gravitating toward options trading. Some of them got to the point where they were so addicted to trading options as their form of gambling that they were attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings for their options trading, which sounds wild when you think about it. But unfortunately, if that's the way you want to trade options in that kind of crazy gambling sort of style, you certainly can. That's not the way I trade, but some people unfortunately do that. I know Jim Cramer over on CNBC, he hates 0DTE options. He sees that as gambling. He sees that as what he calls, quote, pure greed. The people that trade 0DT options, they're just greedy. They're just trying to make a lot of money really fast. I kind of agree with him, kind of disagree. But Jim Cramer is one of these weird people. He also hates day trading stocks, by the way, which I actually agree with him on this, because he sees day trading stocks as something that is pure gambling. You have no edge at all. Whether the stock is going up or down in the next few minutes or few hours, how can you predict that? And he's right on that. That is really straight gambling. 0DTE options, because options trading are a little bit different. You're not purely directional on many option strategies. I'm not sure if I would call 0DT options gambling. On one article I read, I remember there was this one gambling addict that was trading options. He was a trading addict, if you will, but we're going to call him a gambling addict. He was using option strategies to gamble, and he referred to trading as being almost like crack cocaine. It was so addictive because he could gamble really fast. Obviously, when you're using trading as your form of gambling, when the markets are open, you can be in and out of trades within a few seconds if you want to. I mean, you can take hundreds or even thousands of trades in a day, depending on how many contracts of things you're buying and selling. So he was like, yeah, this is like crack cocaine to an addict. And this is one of the things that, gambling addicts, they're looking for that dopamine rush. It's almost like the gamer crowd. If you know anybody that's really into gaming, it's all about the rush. It's all about that excitement playing the game, winning the game especially. It's more about the excitement and that dopamine hit more than the money. And that's the thing with gambling addicts, is more than the money, it's about that rush. And here's the thing, the more they gamble, the more they play that game, the harder it is to get that dopamine high. So they have to do more and more of it. They have to bet bigger and bigger, right? The game becomes less and less exciting unless they up the stakes constantly, and it's this vicious cycle. Casinos are very smart because they know about this whole dopamine rush effect that many of these gambling addicts have. So they use a lot of visual stimulation to activate these dopamine reward centers in our brain. So when you go to a casino, it's all a show, right? It's all the lights and the sounds and slot machines and jackpots hitting and, balloons coming down from the ceiling. And of course, you got crowds of people around some of the table games. You got people cheering, and it is all a show. And that stimulates those centers in the mind, especially for those gambling addicts that are looking for that dopamine rush. That all contributes to them getting that rush. One thing that doesn't get talked about almost never, I don't know if I've ever actually read articles about this, but I'm going to bring it up here. The reason I bring up the visual stimulation of the casino, for example, is I do think the visual stimulation of our trading platforms, many of them are very fancy with how they, report the latest prices and the charts and the graphs. Some of them are very visually stimulating. And I think that appeals to some of those people, some of those gambling addicts, that visual stimuli kind of helps them in that regard. Now, getting back to the question of, is trading gambling, and especially is options trading gambling? Well, I looked up the statistics earlier. What is the percentage of the population that is considered gambling addicts? And in the US, studies report that about 2.5% of the US population would be considered gambling addicts. And I think that's right in line with what you see with trading. I don't think we have more gambling addicts than the general population. I think that 2.5% number is right in line. I think that if we're talking about options trading, I think that's the Wall Street Bets crowd, right? There are 2.5%. They're the 2.5% out there that are trying to play the lottery with their options, right? They're trying to use options as lottery ticket plays. They're not the norm. I know that's crazy. People see how many people are on Wall Street Bets. Most people on Wall Street Bets are there to laugh at the idiots on Wall Street Bets. They're not there to actually take inspiration from them as far as, hey, I want to take the same trades as these idiots. No, we're there because it's entertaining. I promise you, 98% of options traders are not trading the way the Wall Street Bets crowd is. I don't have hard numbers, but just what I see when I'm on trading forums and communities, what I see out in the real world, I would say 97, 98% of traders are trading in responsible ways. You know, they're trying to trade the right way. You have that 2.5% of traders in this case that I think are out there being purely speculative traders. Speculative meaning they're gambling. They're just trying to hit a lick, right? They're trying to hit that jackpot. But those, again, you're always going to have that in anything that involves money. And of course, any responsible financial content creator is going to try to dissuade people from going down that route of speculative trading because it doesn't work. In the long run, you're going to lose money. Speculation in trading loses money, and in most cases, it loses a lot of money. That is not the way to be a long-term, consistent, repeatable, profitable trader. Also, this is one of the things you need to be aware of if you're new to trading. Trading has to be boring. If you're trading in a way that is exciting to you, you are not trading in a proper way. You're looking for that dopamine rush. You are exhibiting dopamine seeking behavior if you're trading in a style that you consider exciting, where the wins are really big and you're all happy for it, or the losses are just brutal, right? You're trading in the wrong way. Trading must be boring if you plan on being in this game for the long term. Trading has to be boring, consistent, repetitive, repeatable, doing the same things over and over and over and over again. So nothing exciting. Again, anybody out there trading in an exciting sort of manner, they're straight gambling. And especially, unfortunately, I see a lot of the fake gurus, the fake trading gurus on YouTube and other platforms. They try to sucker people that have this gambling addiction kind of gene. They try to sucker these people into buying their bullshit courses and trading methods. And they are preying on people that unfortunately are not properly armed to fight against that. So, be careful. If you see anybody on YouTube or social media, anybody promoting trading strategies that are really exciting, the trader you're watching on video seems excited all the time to be doing what he's doing, that is not a real trader. That's a fake trading guru. Be very careful. Anyway, I don't know if I actually answered the question, is trading gambling? I guess it would depend, right? I would say for 97.5% of the population, no, trading is not gambling. For 2.5% of the population, I would say trading is gambling. Now, before I go, I do want to mention that I have written a book on my favorite option strategy, which is the wheel option strategy. I have a book out on Amazon called the Super Wheel Option Strategy. You'll find a link to this book in the description below. Also, if you want to help support my work, please subscribe to the DT Options Discord server. I hold a live voice chat there each and every trading day. We get together, I share my trading platform. You guys get to see all my opening trades, closing trades, rolls, everything. You get to ask me questions. I get to ask you questions. We have a nice little trading community over there, and we'd love to have you. Peace, guys.